Teachers and professors, how did you secretly get back at that kid? Story 1. I taught English at a ritzy private school in South Korea. We weren't allowed to discipline the kids for any reason, no matter what, because the school was making money from the tuition. Now, for the most part, the kids, grade 5 through 6, were pretty good, but there was this one kid. He was a little crap about everything, always disruptive, bullying the other kids, throwing pencils, writing swear words in Korean on the whiteboard before class, never listening, etc. I started eating a lot of kimchi on the days that I taught that specific class, which gave me my wicked indigestion. When I walked by the kid, I would let out these horrible, silent, creeping hot farts. No one ever blames the teacher, and after a couple weeks, he became known as the farty kid. He was still a little crap, but it made me feel better knowing that he was knocked down a few pegs. While that's hilarious and slightly devious, I can't help but imagine the look on that little troublemaker's face as he became known as the farty kid. It's a clever way to get back at him without really breaking any rules. It's a good thing that you didn't get caught though, or you might have had some explaining to do to the school administration why you are farting on all the kids. Story 2. My stats professor said that he saw a group of really talkative and distracting kids doing well, and he thought it was fishy. He looked at the tests and saw that they were all the same answers. And then, when he looked at the seating chart and noticed that they could all look over each other's shoulders to the front of the class where the smart, quiet girl sat. My solution? Give her a different test. Only her. And when he handed back the test, he told everyone who got under a certain grade, like a 50%, to come see him. Now, each student got like a 10% or something. And when they were alone, he basically said, well, this is your punishment for cheating. Don't do it again. I thought it was pretty awesome. Story 3. There was a kid in my class who always was cheating on my tests and quizzes. I caught him several times and contacted the parents, but nothing was ever done about it, aside from the fact that he got zeros if I caught him. I don't think his mom ever really believed he was cheating as much as he was, and there were plenty of times I probably didn't catch him. Now, once on the midterm, he missed the test. He came back the next day and I gave the kid their scores back, which also had the answers, but not the questions. And I saw him sneakily talking to his friends, and they gave him their papers that had the answers on it. I didn't say anything, but the makeup midterm has the same questions with all of the answer choices moved over by only one letter. The little bastard got a 3% on a multiple choice midterm. I assume he must have just read one question and then copied the rest from his friends. Justice. Story 4. Not secretly, but I learned to take copious notes and have a file on every student. Lazy students will often try to throw the blame on the teacher. I had 2 students request a meeting with the dean of students to discuss my unfair grading, and I showed up with a stack of evidence. Every substantive in-person interaction was documented on the front of the file, and I included copies of every email and note on the inside. There's nothing more embarrassing than coming face to face with your own laziness and being unable to wiggle free. They started paying attention after that. Well, it looks like those kids picked the wrong teacher to mess with. You came prepared with a stack of evidence like a boss. It's like they say, if you want to go to war, bring an army of paperwork. It's great that you were able to teach these lazy students a lesson, and now they know not to mess with you or your meticulous note-taking skills. Who knew that organization could be so fun and powerful at the same time? Story 5. I was in a class where the professor had the 2 blatant plagiarists stand up and read both of their papers at the same time. Halfway through, without even looking at them, and his eyes turned to a wall, he said out the last conclusion statement. Turns out that they stole from his own body of work, and they changed just enough of the paper to make it past the checker. But he reads every paper anyway. It was the most awkward and hilarious thing that I've watched to this day. He then told them that each paper that they wrote would be read out loud by them after each submission, and that he would personally grade their papers. They also had to sit at the front, and he would call on them with every open-ended question first. To be fair, he was furious that these 2 stole from him, called it their ideas, and then changed it into a weaker structure, and then had the nerve to complain about their low grade. He crushed them. It was great. Story 6. High school teacher here had a little crap of a kid that we'll call Anthony. Complained about everything, did no work whatsoever, talked crap about everyone, made fun of kids with disabilities, you name it. And of course, he was always the first to start shrieking that he was the victim in every situation. Everyone was against him, and how come he always got picked on, and so forth. Now, in my teaching career, which has spanned the better part of a decade so far, I've taught more than 1,000 kids. Plenty of those have been bad kids. The thing about bad kids, though, is that they're usually bad for fairly simple reasons. Stuff going on at home, unmedicated or undiagnosed mental illness, trauma in their past, hell, maybe just lonely. Now, if you pay attention, you can find out why almost any kid is acting out. And that said, out of 1,000+ kids, I've encountered maybe 10 who are just genuinely broken people. You could call them sociopaths. No trace of empathy, no trace of conscious or even inner life. People who are basically existing to serve their own desires exclusively and have no compunctions about how they might most quickly realize those desires. The worst part about him was his constant tendency to immediately just crap upon anything that anyone else had to put effort into, including my lesson. We would nearly have these very vulnerable, tender moments in the classroom where kids were talking about big, important issues and really growing intellectually in awesome and uncomfortable ways. And then Anthony would call them a homo or whatever else. Now, one day, this girl, Patrice, an incredibly sweet girl, sensitive with an artist's heart, is sharing something in class for the first time. Visibly nervous, shaky voice, and Anthony, of course, begins making fun of her hair, her glasses, her face, and it's just loud enough that it's plausibly a whisper, but also loud enough that we can all hear what he's saying. So I start walking towards his desk and am interrupted when Patrice very, very calmly says, "Screw you, Anthony." The entire class was dead silent. This girl never spoke, let alone swore, and she said it with such self-control. Everyone's eyes are on me, waiting for me to react, and Anthony starts screaming, "Did you hear that? She said the F word. You always get me in trouble when I say the F word. This stuff ain't fair. How this ugly bee gonna..." And I say, "Huh? I didn't hear that," and then turned back around and continued the lesson. A few kids cheered, and it felt really good. Story 7. Not me, but this happened to my friends. Our bonus project in physics was making an eggmobile, a vehicle designed to move an egg only using the power of an elastic band. The mark that you got for this project would replace the lowest test score that you got on the unit test during the year. Now, 2 of my friends worked together on one, and one friend was an average student while the other friend was fairly smart, but pushy and argumentative. A real Steve Jobs type. Now, they constructed their eggmobile out of Lego, and it did work. However, the physics teacher was a little tired of friend number 2 at this point of the year. So the mark that he gave was enough to give student 1 a nice boost. However, it was 1 point lower than student 2's lowest test score. Yeah, it sounds like friend number 2's pushy attitude finally caught up with him. It's funny how sometimes the universe has a way of balancing things out. Even though the eggmobile worked, the physics teacher's grading showed that friend number 2's behavior is not going to be rewarded. I bet he was kicking himself for not being a little bit more pleasant to the teacher throughout the year. Now, on the bright side, friend number 1 was able to benefit from their hard work, so at least the project wasn't a complete waste. But lesson learned, it pays to be nice to your teacher. Story 8. My abnormal psych, a 400 level class, so you would assume people in this class were interested in the field, had us visit a local homeless shelter. Now, this was an accelerated night class, so classes were 4 hours long. She arranged for us to go during our normal class time, and a few people in the class felt that it was dumb or a waste of time and just bailed just as the tour was starting. The final exam for that class was about 4 questions that were very easy to answer if you had stayed for the whole tour, and absolutely impossible if you did not. Story 9. I was an English adjunct for a few years. My favorite story involved a kid that I caught cheating. She was probably my least favorite student in class. She would spend the whole class obviously distracted, either texting or trying to subtly talk to her group of friends. They all sat next to each other in the back of the room. Now, I could tell that they thought that they were being sly, but I had a policy of basically not giving a crap what you were doing as long as you weren't annoying your neighbor. Now, anyway, they all put in the minimum effort into the class. None of them gave a crap, and I'm pretty sure none of them really deserved to even be in college. Now, eventually, they started to annoy me, and I had to constantly stop class, this is in college, to shut them up. But hey, they were passing, barely, so they didn't care. One of these girls submitted an essay to me right before spring break, and well, it was obviously plagiarized. How obvious? It was literally a sample essay from a grammar workbook type website online. I failed her for the assignment, gave her the usual plagiarism "I caught you" speech, and then reported it per department rules. Now at this point, she could still pass, but she'd have to be perfect. Right after spring break, another assignment was due, and guess what? Yep, she plagiarized that one too. So I set some things up to catch her, called her in after class, and told her what I found. Her response? Well, she didn't plagiarize as she didn't write the paper. Excuse me? I didn't write it. My friend did. You realize that that's plagiarism too, right? No, I didn't write it. Yeah, exactly. So I explained to her that she had just admitted to double plagiarism, as not only had she not written her own paper, but the person who wrote her paper also didn't write it. She apologized and asked for another chance. I had to stop myself from laughing. I asked her why she thought she deserved one after I just caught her cheating less than a week prior. She looked dumbfounded and then went into a rant about how college isn't fair and how I'm worked too hard. Now, for the record, we only had 4 800-word papers in this class. She also thought that she deserved credit for plagiarizing the paper. Her story changed halfway through from 2 different websites. I reported that to the department, which triggered an academic trial. Now, a trial is exactly what it sounds like. We both sit in a room in front of the dean, a council of professors, and a student representative. They hear the case, and then your fate is decided. If you show up, you usually can prevent yourself from getting kicked out of school, as you can basically say anything and they'll feel sorry for you. The one thing you can't do is not show up, as that essentially means that I have free reign to make you look like an a-hole and get you expelled. Well, in this class, the day of the trial, all her friends were in class talking, loudly, about how they were going to write about how crappy of a professor I was on our reviews, because I did my job. And basically, I went in that day and surprise, they didn't show up. Now, I had images and comparisons between her paper and the site that she copied her work from. I had detailed accounts from other students about how she was disruptive in class. I had copies of my syllabus that outlined exactly what plagiarism is. I had a recording of what she told me during our last conversation, and she was expelled. I still have the letters her friends wrote. I received the feedback at the end of the year, all anonymous, mind you, in an envelope. One of the letters is a page-long run-on sentence that says no one liked me and that I was the worst professor ever. The other is basically identical. I only taught for 2 years, but these were the only 2 negative reviews I've ever received. All because I just wanted to teach and not have people plagiarize in my class. Before I left, I checked on both students, and both had dropped out. Both had plagiarism charges on their record. Yeah, F them. I hope the 3 of them are still complaining about how hard college was somewhere because they couldn't handle writing 800-word essays. Story 10. A lot of the guys in my high school would dip during school, chewing tobacco. And most of the teachers would just roll their eyes, tell them to spit it out, and confiscate the rest. Now, a couple teachers that were known for punishing teens who were dipping and would go as far as suspending them for it, one of those teachers enjoyed messing with her students. If she realized that you were dipping, she'd give you an out. You could either admit to dipping and get sent to the office for disciplinary action, or you could drink from the spit bottle that you were pretending was just a Coke. Now, I saw too many classmates try to avoid punishment by taking a big swig, only to rush off to the bathroom to vomit. Can't say that they didn't know the risk before they walked in, though. Well, that's like a twisted version of Truth or Dare, but with like spit bottles. I can only imagine the looks on those students' faces when they realized what they had just swallowed. It is a clever way for the teacher to make them think twice about dipping again, and it's definitely a memorable punishment. I hope those students learned their lesson and never tried to dip in school again. Story 11. High school teacher here. I've had a number of challenging students in my 15 years as a public school teacher. Now, these kids sometimes don't know how to act. They might lash out and treat teachers with disrespect. They might blow off assignments and make other choices that increase the burdens of my job. So, you could get back at them by offering them extra attention, helping them grow by seeking productive ways to correct their behavior, challenging their academic failures by offering help outside of school hours, addressing holistic problems by circling the wagons and bringing outside resources to bear, including guidance, administration, and parents in a cooperative effort to encourage growth. Now, I get back at that kid by helping him or her get past being that kid. In the end, we can both sit back and laugh at how hard it sometimes feels to mature. Story 12. Not a teacher, but a student who got back at that teacher. In my sophomore year, I transferred to a small Catholic high school because I was bullied pretty badly at my public high school. I was eager to show my teachers and my parents that I could work hard and that I wanted to improve my grades. English has always been my strong suit, so I was excited when my English teacher assigned us 4 essay questions the first day for the Scarlet Letter. I started to work on them from the moment I got home to the moment that I went to bed. I was very excited and knew that my answers were very in-depth and delved into the symbolism that Hawthorne is famous for. Now let me note that I used absolutely no outside sources for my answers, only my mind and the book. When I got to class, I excitedly handed them to Miss Leary and couldn't wait until she graded them. Silly me. She handed them back with my answers crossed out and the word plagiarism written in huge red letters across the top. I was heartbroken. I didn't know what to do, so I said nothing. The next 3 assignments, the same thing happened, and on the 4th, I came out of school crying. My aunt was picking me up that day because my mom had a meeting. My aunt was pissed. My aunt is a very cool lady and gets along with everyone, but when she gets mad, hell hath no fury. She marched into school and reamed Leary out. Leary acted all apologetic, blah, 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 so the next assignment I was happy to get back. But guess what? Same thing happened. Big red X's, and at the top, read and define the word plagiarism. So, it became clear that I needed to take matters into my own hands. I asked what the problem with my papers was, and she said, it was obviously beyond your reading comprehension level. So I said, listen, lady, I don't know what your reading comprehension level is, but I'm not gonna dumb my work down for you. I was sent to the principal, whom I showed all 5 assignments to, and she got quite a kick out of it. And I guess she was awful to everyone because she ended up getting fired. Screw you, Mrs. Leary. Story 13. Teacher got back to me by blatantly failing me. I was not a model student by any means. My grade for this particular class was probably around 55 before the final exam, which was worth like 40% of the total grade. It's not that I didn't understand the material, it's that I would just usually lose points for forgetting small details, most of which had to do with very specific formatting requirements, i.e. formulas needed to be underlined, answers that needed to be in the box, etc. I remember failing more than one exam where I had gotten all the answers right. Well, anyway, I aced the final. I had studied and practiced and was pretty damn sure I'd gotten 100%. However, my final grade for the course ended up being 59%. I went to see the professor and asked to see the final so that I could see what I had done wrong. Turns out she only corrected half of it. The part that was corrected was perfect. She said it was an accident and that she would finish grading that afternoon. And when I came back the next day, she had lost it. Yeah, that's some BS. It sounds like that teacher really had it out for you. It's frustrating how you know you're capable of doing well, but then you're kind of held back by nitpicky formatting requirements. And to have your final exam lost after the teacher promised to finish grading it seems unlikely, also unfair. It's a shame that some teachers let personal bias get in the way of providing a fair and impartial education to their students. I hope you were able to learn from the experience and then move on to better things. In the comments, did anyone have a teacher who you felt just always had it out for you, no matter what you did?